Hello, and welcome to week 4, EDEL 414ZA. This week, we're going to be talking about race and ethnicity. So, I'd like to take just a moment to think about race and ethnicity. We've looked a lot at our own cultures, our own backgrounds through things like our identity webs, identity poems. What race and ethnicity do you identify with? And how important is it for you as a future educator to figure out the race and ethnicity of your future students? To get at this topic a little bit better, we're going to revisit something we talked about last week, and those were microaggressions. So, when I think about defining microaggressions, we really need to think about how comments relating to someone's identity, which includes our race and ethnicity, can leave lasting negative impressions on the receiver of the message. So, a microaggression may not be intentionally malicious. However, the way it's said can often come from well-intentioned people who don't understand that they have biases, and those biases are coming out in what they're saying. So let's look at an example in practice and try to identify any microaggressions you hear, either from the child in the clip that you're going to see, the parents, the people involved in the restaurant. Just try and look for examples of microaggressions you might hear. As you do that, I'd like to encourage you to grab a piece of paper or sticky note and individually write down the microaggressions that you hear. So we're going to take a moment to switch screens here and watch our clip. Again, you're listening for microaggressions.
So good.
I want a cheeseburger.
This is a special soup called pho.
You told me not to say that word.
It is delicious. This is the food of your people.
Can I get you anything else?
Actually, we're just trying to teach our daughter about your country. And as I'm saying that, I'm hoping you're from Vietnam.
I was born there.
So was Lily.
Oh, it's a beautiful country. My family still lives there.
I hate Vietnam.
Lily, honey, we don't hate.
I hate Vietnam.
Okay, we need just a second. Lily, that was rude.
I want to go home.
No, it's important that you celebrate the culture of your ancestors. You are Vietnamese.
No, I'm not. I'm gay. I'm gay.
Honey, no, you're not gay. You are just confused. Oh my God, what is wrong with me? It's like Oh, please, we have tons of lesbian friends.
Odd that you would reference our friends and not us.
Okay,
Also gay.
We should just go.
No, nobody's going anywhere until she finishes the whole soup.
No, Gloria, it's fine.
No,
We don't
it's
wanna
not
push her.
fine. That's the problem with this country. Nobody cares where they come from. They just want cheeseburgers and prep school, and they have forgotten about Colombia.
Okay. I can't help but feel that maybe you're bringing something to the table that's possibly not at all about Lily.
I think you're right. It's just that I feel like I'm losing my children to America. They're just going to grow up and become boring old white people.
Most of our friends are white, actually. Okay, can everybody just calm down and go back to their own conversations? Thank you.
Hey, what's going on with you?
Manny has forgotten most of his Spanish, and Joe, I'm sure he's not even going to learn it. I know this is silly, but I just don't like feeling like I'm so different from the rest of my family.
Oh, honey.
It feels so lonely,
Okay,
yes.
just a second. Lily, is that why you want to be gay, to be more like your daddies?
Oh, honey, no, the three of us are a family, even though we come from different places. You know, you were born in Vietnam, and I grew up in a city, and even though he never talks about it, your daddy grew up on a farm.
The point is that we're a family because we love each other.
Okay.
You know what? You just caused a scene in the restaurant, and you can't get any more like your daddies than that.
Maybe I'll just take Manny and Joe to Colombia this summer.
I think that's a great idea. I really think that keeping in touch with your heritage only enriches our culture.
Absolutely. I think we would all be better off if people would go back to where they came from.
I'll pull the car around.
Yes.
Okay, let's
Do
take
we
a
spend a
moment
lot
to
of time-
pause. Sorry, we're going to jump to another screen here. But as you thought about that, there are many microaggressions in that example. What were some that you wrote down? Take a minute to think back on those. One that clearly comes to mind is, the little girl saying, "I hate Vietnam." That is definitely a microaggression. She doesn't really understand what she's saying. She just really wants to be like her parents, but she's coming up with this microaggression and kind of classifying something that she doesn't know. So think about those microaggressions. Even the mom with her children from Colombia, she's from Colombia, but her children are born and raised here. It sounds like, she's really struggling for them to find their identity, and she's making a generalization about them based on that. So really thinking about those microaggressions even that come from ourselves, or microaggressions we've heard about other people. Like in the example at the end, the father was saying, oh, it'd be great if everyone just came back from where they came from. He was really trying to say something positive about celebrating cultures and the diversity of the country, but it came off very, very wrong. So I want you to think about these microaggressions in action. We saw different examples in that clip. So now I want you to ask yourself, why is it important to know about microaggressions as a future teacher? How might they impact people, and specifically, how have they impacted you? So we're really going to think about this last question here on the prompt, how they've impacted you, very carefully. I'm going to show you one more video clip to kind of get the idea of some examples of how microaggressions can impact people. Then you're going to actually identify some of your own microaggressions that have been said or commented about you. And I'll give you an example of that here in a minute. But let's go back and look at one more clip. This will kind of show a more realistic example of microaggressions and how they impact students.
Oh, you're so pretty for a black girl. Oh, she has a Jew nose.
Oh, your hair would look so good if it was straight.
Jews are so cheap. Why are you so cheap?
Do you speak good English?
How are you an Iraqi Jew?
I think the person saying microaggression kind of doesn't really think about it.
This person who said it was my friend, and I was astonished that they would say something like that.
You don't want to make a big deal about it, but then it's also you just said something that offended me, so I feel like I should speak up.
Because they're micro, because they're very subtle, they're small, you feel like you don't have a reason to be upset. You're overreacting, and people even can make you feel that way when you bring it up. They're like, oh, you can't take a joke.
You're making too big of a deal of this. Why are you overreacting?
Don't take it so seriously. It was just a joke. Chill out.
Say
oh no, I actually love black people. I love people of color. They try to just minimize the situation.
If someone feels hurt by a microaggression, it shouldn't just be pushed to the side.
It definitely has negative impacts and leads to people disliking who they actually are. Those kinds of subtle offensive comments can build up over time, and they can have a deep psychological effect, and they can make you feel bad, and they can make you doubt yourself.
We try to just use jokes to make things less awkward or ease social experiences, but it is important because you need to be aware of what you're saying and who you're speaking to.
Think of what you say and how it can affect the person you're saying it to.
Okay, so this last quote right here on the screen I think is critical to really talk to your kids about microaggressions. For us as future teachers, that's about talking to our future students about microaggressions, because those words really do matter. So to get more of a personal experience with this, I'm going to pull up some microaggressions here. I'm going to go back to my identity web, and I'd like you to actually pull yours up or open it up if you printed out a copy or have a copy of it. And I'm going to go through some of the microaggressions that I've experienced, and I want you to think about those that you've experienced as I'm going through my examples. So probably one of the first ones and the hardest ones for me is the comment that I'm not a biological mother. I am a mother. I've been raising my daughter for 12 years. I consider myself a mother, but I always get the you're not a biological mother because we adopted her from Guatemala. That is really hurtful because my daughter is my daughter, inside and out. When I was growing up, I had my mother, father, one sister, and 4 brothers, and then there's me. I was the lightest skinned of all my brothers and sisters, so they would joke around and call me Casper. I took after my father's Spanish heritage and have a lot lighter skin than my brothers, but hearing that I was Casper, really kind of hurt and made me doubt my own identity as a Hispanic female. Coming from a small town in Utah, I lived there from 2nd grade through 9th grade, Rosebud, Utah. I kind of get the comment sometimes that I'm small town, kind of a hick. That can also have an impact and really kind of impacted me when I went to high school in a bigger city. That was really something that kind of carried over. One of the things, as I said before, I'm a cancer survivor. That is something I'm very proud of, but also something that people kind of label me as too. It's oh, you had cancer. That's with that negative kind of connotation of cancer. Cancer for me was a very challenging experience, but it really helped me to grow and appreciate life and my family and those who were really there to support me. I knew at the end of this who my friends were and who really cared about me. So saying you have cancer is really the stereotype of, oh, she's had this terrible illness, but it can be other things as well. Sometimes I've heard from students, particularly on TVALs, that I can be uncaring. I'm not responsive to their needs. I really think this is something that is not true. I work really hard to be caring, and I'm considerate of other students. We're going to talk about how I want to make sure everyone is successful a little bit later in this video. And we're going to talk about how I've clarified and adjusted some of the assignments to make sure that does happen. So I think I am a very caring person, not uncaring at all. And finally, probably one of the harshest ones that came from my relatives was when I got married. I was only 22. My husband and I had been dating about a year, and a lot of my relatives, and these are Mexicans, people who, had families that were migrant workers, and they said that my husband was marrying me for the green card. And that just really upset me, really hurt that people would think that. That was definitely not the reason he married me. Otherwise, he would have left a long time ago because he got his green card. But we'll be married 25 years in April. And I'm really proud of the fact that we have overcome this label or stereotype of the green card. And it's somewhat ironic in the sense that my cousins and relatives who said this to me, the majority of them are now divorced. So my husband and I have kind of overcome that stereotype, and we are very happily married for 25 years. So now I want you to take a moment to pause the video, look at your own identity web, and think about some of those personal microaggressions that you've heard or you've felt about you. Sayings or comments that people have made, whether it's based on where you live, how you look, your prior experiences. Take a moment to identify those and try and write at least 3 or 4 around your identity web, or maybe on a separate sheet of paper and link them back to your identity web later. So pause the video and identify your personal microaggressions, please. Okay, hopefully I had a chance to complete your identity web, really looking at your own microaggressions. Sorry about that. I'm going to go back here. If we return to your identity web and look at the microaggressions you noted, I would have you talk to a couple of these with your peers by sharing some of the microaggressions identified or how it's impacted you. If you have a family member nearby or someone who you can share this with, please take a moment to do so. And what I'm going to have you do now is think about how, as a future teacher, we need to really think about those microaggressions and how they can impact us, and how we need to inform our students so that they can be ready to recognize and address those microaggressions. As future teachers, we need to help our students understand these as soon as or before we hear students using them in the classroom. To kind of help with this, we're going to do a little exercise here to help counter microaggressions. Sorry. So we're going to write 3 identity statements. I know I asked you to write identity statements last week, but this time we're going to kind of take over the power of those microaggressions, and we're going to write what we are not. For example, I want you to write now below the 3 microaggressions, at least 3 microaggressions you identified. Now write statements for those microaggressions that say, I am not, and then what the microaggression was. So in my case, I would say, I am not just cancer. So take a moment to do that, and then what you're going to do is you will upload this information. I put a tab here. So if you go into the assignments tab, you will see there's a spot now for, it'll pop up here, my microaggressions and identity statements. So what I want you to do is click on that and go ahead, and yours will look a little different than mine, but when you click on it, this little directions will come up. All you need to do is write down some of those microaggressions you identified, just the words or the ideas, and then below that do your I am not statements. So we have kind of a record of that. That'll be the final assignment in our personal lens. Let me go back to that here so you can see how I've done that. I know several people were confused about the personal lens and how that worked because I had it just compiled as a list of assignments with one overall score. understanding from your feedback that wasn't really working, I went ahead and I broke down all the things we've done over the last 4 weeks, or we will have done this last 4th week, and assigned specific points to them. So one of the first assignments you had was the Origins Flipgrid. That was worth 20 points. I know some people still have yet to get that posted, so please make sure I've extended the due date till February 15th. And that's where you go. If you go into the assignments, the course module, you'll see that assignment there. So let's do that right quick. If we go to our modules, the Origins Flipgrid was in week 2. So we're going to go scroll up here to week 2. And you will see the Origins Flipgrid assignment. So all you need to do is click on the assignment, follow directions if you haven't yet finished it, and get that uploaded, please. Then if we go back to our assignments tab, you'll see the next 2 things we did. We'll pull up here. Were our identity poem and our identity web. And then last week in the video, I asked you to respond with using the active listening prompts to your peers' identity webs and identity poems. You should have had at least 4 responses, 2 for each one. So please go back and look at the video, get the prompts there for week 3 if you haven't done that, and make sure to do your peer responses. Again, I extended all these due dates till the 16th, which is this Saturday, so that there's no confusion. And if you haven't had something done, you can get it done, and there'll be no deductions for these first few assignments because I want to make sure everyone gets them in. Starting after this week with our microaggressions identity statements, I will be taking deductions if something isn't turned in on time. You see the due date here is February 16th. It's available until February 23rd. That means if someone happens to forget, they can still turn it in late. But from now on, the due dates are what I'm going to follow, starting with our microaggressions and identity statements, so that we keep on track. And if people do turn things in late later on, they will start getting point deductions for that. So this all represents our personal lens, what we did in week 2, 3, and 4. So we also have in here the project implicit assignment, which we're going to look at in just a moment. But all these things have really, I hope, helped you get a better idea of who you are, your own identity, and what influences you. So let's go ahead and we're going to talk a little bit about some of the themes I observed in your journals. So if we go up here, sorry, the themes are kind of hiding from us. If we go into our themes, let me just minimize this a little more so you can see it. These are based on the comments you made for your Reflection Wheel Journal 3. I have gone through, kind of gotten a general overview of the comments. I will be putting scores in for all your journals here in the next day or two, as well as the personal lens assignments. So, but from what I've observed in your Reflection Journal 3, the comments, some of the themes you had were that cultural diversity is more than race, ethnicity, skin color. A lot of you picked up on in that culture responsive article how much more encompassing it is than just these things, and how important as a future teacher it is to really look at these. You also picked up on the active listening and anchor charts, and that they're good tools to use in the classroom, something that'll be good to help model for your students this process of active listening. The importance of body language and being a mentor to students also came out as a theme. And then the need for ongoing professional development on diversity in schools, particularly those schools where you have a lot of diversity, was mentioned. But I think any school, this emphasis on diversity would really benefit all students. So these were excellent themes that I observed from your week 3 journals. There were also some additional questions that came up based on your journals. For example, how do you get parents involved? Particularly if they may be reluctant to talk about these issues or have students talking about these issues. How do you engage in difficult conversations? This one was a great question because we really want to challenge our students, but sometimes when do we know it's appropriate? How do we do that? And we're going to actually talk about that here in just a minute. How do we honor students' identities without singling them out or going too far? So again, it's that process of balancing, really celebrating, but not saying, oh, you represent all African American students if you only have one African American student in the classroom. So really trying to figure out honoring versus crossing the line. And then finally, how do you encourage students to share personal stories without oversharing? I think this is also a great question. And one of your peers responded in an excellent way to this question, saying it's really about creating that safe community environment, the safe classroom environment, so that students feel free to share and not feel like they're going to be judged. And if something comes out that might be a little bit more personal, really working with the student and the community to kind of encompass and celebrate them, like with Christina in our textbook. So let's come back to that second bullet here where it says, how do you engage in difficult conversations? Well, one of the best ways I think to do that is really to think about how from our own personal lens we can help our students grow and then also teach them through a variety of activities. So we're going to be wrapping up this week our personal lens. We've explored our surface, shallow, and deep culture through weeks 1 through 4. And then now we're going to be moving into the CRT educator lens so we can learn those strategies on how to address this in practice. We're going to look at how to improve diverse students' learning capacity, really teaching and learning by applying effective and cognitive teaching and learning strategies, and really pushing it back against those dominant negative narratives and those microaggressions we might see in the classroom. So this is where we're going to focus for the next probably 8 weeks. So let's go ahead and look at how we're going to first jump into that educator lens. First, it's really about thinking about the information that we're learning and the approach that's being taken in the classroom. So I want you to read the following. I'm going to read the following statement to you, and I want you to see if you agree with this statement or if you disagree with this statement. So let me come here. Sorry, I'm going to come back up again. So for this one, let me see, I'm trying to get my arrow here to work. So for this, what I want you to do is think about the statement. We don't need to justify having focused conversations about racism in schools. As an educator, do you think this is true or not true? Hopefully from the articles you read on culture responsive teaching and the article about racism in schools, you would say that this is not true. For the face-to-face students, I would actually have them go to each side of the room, whether they agreed or disagreed, which is kind of the instructions you saw here below, and talk about why that is. But think about your own beliefs, and did you agree with that or did you not agree with that, and why? And then we're going to think again about this second statement. Part of our job as educators is to secure a non-racist future. So our responses to racism in our schools must be clear and compassionate. So thinking about that statement, do you agree with this statement? Yes or no? Hopefully you would say yes, that this is something that as a future educator, we really need to help secure that non-racist future. And the only way to do that is to be very clear and compassionate within our classrooms and address these issues of racism in our schools and be advocates for our students. Some great tips were provided in the article, Principles for Having Candid Conversations. This was in the article titled Racism in Schools, or Let's Talk About Racism in Schools. So think about those principles for candid conversations that are in bullets at the bottom of the page. I think it was about page 4. Once you've looked at that, think about the implications of these for you as a future teacher. Have you seen any of these in practice? What information might be helpful or beneficial to you? So I'm going to give you a minute to do that. Pause the video, and I'm going to go ahead and pop open our article here. So if I go back to the modules, you will see for week 4, we had our Let's Talk About Racism in Schools document. I'm going to go scroll down to the point where I want you to read. So if we go down to about page 4, you're going to see the principles for brave conversations. And then, sorry, that's the brave conversations. We're going to go to candid conversations. So what you want to do is look at how can we really engage students by informing our conversation and having those candid conversations. So there are many suggestions and tips here, like using fiction and nonfiction to help students, to open students to different worlds, help them see situations from different perspectives, and build empathy. And that, I think, is like one of the key strategies here to really help us as future educators. Another question came up if we go back up here to how do you engage students in difficult conversations and how do you honor student identities? This can be done readily with, or easily, I think, with using literature that's fiction and nonfiction. Some of this literature may be a bit more challenging than others, which is why you're actually going to be doing your multicultural lesson plan to teach us about how we can use this nonfiction or fiction to open up students to different worlds, help them see situations from different perspectives, and even build empathy. So let's take a look again at that multicultural assignment. It's kind of where we'll wrap up for this week. If you go down to the assignments tab, you're going to see this is in our educator conceptual lens because we're moving on to the classroom now. So with the multicultural lesson plan, if you click on that under the assignments tab, the educator lens, you will see a PDF document here. And I will be uploading a Word version of this as well, so you can just type in the information. But what you're going to do, you'll open up that document. And I'm going to download it here so that we can see it. And this document kind of gives you some tips for developing lessons that are multicultural. So what I want you to do is think about, if you are in your practicum, you're going to contextualize this lesson by creating a lesson for your practicum classroom. And you can pick any culturally diverse textbook that you want. It can be on any topic like race, ethnicity. It can be about socioeconomic status, English as a second language, special education, military connected, a variety of topics. And those are all listed in your course schedule. That is what we'll be covering from this week through like week 14, I believe. So any of those topics are free game. Identify a children's book, and what I want you to do is, for the lesson plan, I'll have a heading where you put your name of your book, your name, and then you're going to make like a little presentation. And the presentation you're going to do is called a VoiceThread. It's a new app that'll allow you to upload a PowerPoint or a PDF document, and then you can talk as you're going to kind of explain what you would do in your lesson. This is a 10-minute lesson plan. So the key things I'm looking for is really just like a one slide that kind of describes the nature of the learner, addressing some of these questions here, thinking you're contextualizing the nature of the learner based on the students in your practicum classroom. And then think about your scholarly knowledge. Again, look at the questions and think, how can I address these based on what I know and the book I'm going to be using. And then really the emphasis of this lesson, you're going to do all parts, the beginning, middle, and end. But I really want you to focus on this lesson opener. How are you going to capture the student's attention? And that's where you're going to model for us in your lesson on VoiceThread. You really want to focus on this part here. The lesson plan template, as I said, is right below. I'll make sure to put this in a Word document for you. It'll have your subject area, and I'll have here actually the children's book title, the grade level, your name, date, and they're going to say, what's your goal? What your instructional goal, your curriculum objectives, and then you're going to identify your multicultural goals. These are great because it really helps you think about the book you're using and how to contextualize that for your future students. So I want you to check off at least one or more of these goals for the book that you've identified. And then you're going to do your instructional delivery. What would happen for the student activities, what materials or resources you need. Remember, this instructional delivery emphasizes your lesson opener. Materials or resources, and assessment evaluation. You'll fill that out. There is a sample lesson here to kind of give you an idea of what you're looking for, or what I'm looking for, and what you should be doing in your lesson. Again, you're going to use an app called VoiceThread to complete this, and I'll have directions for that. I'll upload those into a separate tab in the week 4 course module so you can find that VoiceThread link and how to do it. Again, the purpose of this multicultural lesson plan is really to get you thinking about a more culturally responsive approach to instruction and really emphasizing or thinking about the students, your own knowledge, and how you're going to capture students' attention in that lesson opener. Well, I think that is all for now. I'm going to go ahead and let you go here. I will be setting up a Zoom session. I'll send out an email with that tomorrow explaining when that will be. The Zoom session is really going to focus on introducing our course project for this class and how we're going to do it, and we will sign up actually for groups here towards the end of the week once I do that Zoom session. So if you have any questions, you need additional information or support, remember, always email me. I'm here to support you. You guys are doing a great job. Keep up the wonderful work, and I will be talking to you soon.